Yes, we are live. So hello everyone and welcome to our webinar and to our new autumn webinar series. My name is Olena Gryniuk. I'm Regional Director for the Central Eastern Europe at the SME Banking Club, and I will host today's webinar. And today we will speak about effortless SME lending and how to make process of lending to the SME customers simpler and faster. And I'm very glad to be joined today by Dimitry Oosthoek, Head of Global Clients at Business Lending at Topicus, the Netherlands. Hello, Dimitry, and welcome.
Hello, Olena. Thank you.
So before we will go to the topic, let me mention very shortly organization information. So our webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes. We are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive the link to the video and the presentations. And we will start from the presentation, and right after, we will have time for your questions. So please type your questions into the chat. So let us go to the topic. I would like to share with you very quickly the information on the situation on the CEE region regarding the digital processes for SMEs. So we at the SME Banking Club on the annual basis are doing the study on the digital lending processes. So last year we did, and here are the results, that 18 companies, meaning banks and non-banking lenders, has at least partially digital processes for SME lending. And only 40% of them, meaning, okay, let's count less than 10, had fully digital processes. For this year, so we are now updating this information, and the new study for this year will be available in October, and we will present it. What we see is that, yes, the number of banks and non-banking lenders that have already fully digital lending processes are increasing. So many companies implemented this year digital signatures, which was like, because this part of the signing of loan agreement was mostly either physical ones, so the customer should come to the branch or contact the relationship manager or wait for the courier for the paper agreements and then sign and send back. So this year, many companies implemented digital signatures, and the number of the companies implementing or having the digital solution, digital SME lending process is increasing. So forecasted number of this will be around up to 30 for this year. So this is the situation at the moment at the CE market. And Dimitry, I would like to pass the word to you to share your experience at Topicus and with your customers, how this process can be digitalized and what does it take. So you are welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dimitry Oosthoek, and I am responsible for global clients at Topicus. I'm happy to be here today and to talk to you about SME lending, and then specifically how we can make this easier, how we can make this effortless. And so I will start with a short introduction of Topicus. And from there on, we will discuss effortless SME lending and also zoom in on how we do that with our Fyndoo platform. So to start with a short introduction of Topicus, we started 20 years ago in Deventer, the Netherlands. And back then, our mission was already the same as it is nowadays. We developed platforms with the mission to create customer empowering, community engagement, and operational excellence. And at present, we have 4,500 people doing that all across Europe. And we provide platforms to clients in select group of markets. And so one of these markets is finance. I am part of the Topicus Finance division, and I have a focus on business lending. And here it is our mission to empower entrepreneurs, to stimulate entrepreneurship by better access to financing, and to provide operational excellence for lenders such as banks. And I must say that I'm very proud to say that in our home market, the Netherlands, the majority of banks use our solutions for their business lending activities. And outside the Netherlands, we are active in 41 other countries. So let's move on to effortless lending. And this is where I hope that all the tech will work and that I can share my screen. So let's see. So now I think if everything goes well, you should see a party lady with a yellow background. Can you confirm that, Olena?
Yes, yes, it works.
Oh, okay.
You can see this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So meet Fyndoo. So I would like to start this presentation with painting a picture of a market that is that has a very big part of our world depending on, but also a market which is underserved and where there is relatively little competition. And I hope that everybody by now would think, well, that sounds like a wonderful business opportunity. And of course it is. And of course, I'm talking about SME lending. So it's a very big business opportunity. But at the same time, we see that a lot of lenders see that as very challenging, as very complex. And then we should think of aspects of capital cost, of relatively small loan tickets, of regulations. And that all makes that a lot of lenders see SMEs as quite costly to serve and thus as very complex. And well, what I want to discuss with you today is, should it actually be that complex, and why not fix it? And how we fix it is what we call effortless lending. And for us, that is the way in which SME lending should be set up, a way to work on this market where SME lending is very viable and very profitable for you. And I would like to show you how our banks transformed to be successful in lending. And of course, despite of how proud we are of this, I do hope that this will not sound as a too commercial story, but I hope to give you some insights and some ideas of how an approach will be successful in SME lending. So let's first take a look at SMEs. We already saw some numbers. And this all starts with dreams, with business ideas. And you probably get me when I talk about this. These are the ideas that we all have, and that when we think of them, that we get quite excited. And it is actually people with courage, with commitment, and with a good story that also take action upon such dreams. And that is how we see a lot of businesses, a lot of SMEs start up. So they all start up with such bright and exciting ideas. And at the end of the day, it is that kind of people, the SME entrepreneurs, that make a very big difference, because they take the risk to chase their dreams and to put everything aside to achieve them. And by doing that, they contribute to the economy, because they create jobs, they create income, they give people purpose. And what I personally find very important is that they also provide examples. So they stimulate others to follow their example and to also start their SME and to realize those business ideas. And so in the end, we see that the entire society benefits of that. And that is why we at Topicus think that business lending is important, really important, because it is only those ideas that get funding, that get realized. And that is where our partners, our banks, and our fintechs step in. And so let's take a closer look, because we already addressed that a lot of lenders think that SME lending is complex. So let's take a closer look at what is stopping banks to enter the market, to grow, to be relevant. And well, we talked to a lot of banks, and we also talked to a lot of SMEs, and we see some developments here. So first of all, we see that there's very high customer expectations. We also see that the competition here sets the bar for customer expectations quite high. And the SMEs that we talk to, a lot of them are frustrated with their banks. And they mention things such as unclear underwriting criteria, they experience poor customer value, or they would think that the whole loan application process is quite slow, that it takes a lot of time. But what also has changed is that we see that these SMEs at the same time have a lot of different choice of where to shop for their loan. And that is where we see what I personally always call the sharks in the water. And then think of the big techs, the fintechs, the neobank, the challenger bank, and they're all out there hunting for your most profitable clients. And they do that by leveraging their platforms. And so they do that at a fraction of your cost, and they do it much faster. And then we already mentioned that a little bit. We see the regulations. And I guess that everybody will agree with me that there's already a lot of regulations applicable to lenders. And we see that the regulators are playing catch up with all the innovation being done. And so that is one thing that we know for certain, that from now on, regulation will only increase. And then actually, in the end, we see that there's also a lot of lagging innovation. And that is where we see that a lot of banks are simply not equipped with an agile infrastructure or able to launch innovation at a high speed. So when looking at these impediments, we get regulators, we get big tech, fintech, customer buyers. We see legacy IT systems that not only slow you down, but they also need to be kept up. So it also takes a large chunk out of your IT budget. It allocates your precious IT capacity. And in the end, it is all challenging. And I can imagine that it leaves a lot of lenders with questions, such as how in the world will I even be able to start innovation, or how should I ever compete with these rising stars? And that, in essence, is why we see that a lot of banks consider business lending as complex. And at the same time, this was for us the drive to work on effortless lending. And so let's take a look at the result of that. Meet Fyndoo. I already mentioned that we've been around for quite some time, for about 20 years. And I think that I can say that lending is in our genes. So in all these years, we've continuously been looking for innovation in tech, in the lending domain, and that everything that we do is aimed at effortless lending. And so we see that nowadays over 12,500 bankers use the Fyndoo platform in their day-to-day operations, and that they have already originated loans for over 200,000 companies, and that at the moment over 40 billion euros is processed annually with Fyndoo, and these numbers are still growing. And so we've discussed the importance of SMEs and also the importance of access to financing, and also that lenders see financing as quite complex. But let's focus on fixing this, on how to create opportunities and how to have your SME lending also become successful. Because in the end, it should be all very easy and very effortless. And the banks working with Fyndoo are already experiencing this. And I can imagine that when you see this slide, that you would think, well, that seems like a very Dutch party. And well, it is. But do remember that a lot of these banks work internationally, and they do that with our platform. So probably they are also active in your country. And so let's take a closer look at one of these banks. So meet the Volksbank. And just to give you an idea, the Volksbank in the Netherlands is the number 6 bank when it comes to size. They have assets of around 67 billion euros. And they use the Fyndoo platform since a couple of years, and they do that for 3 different labels. So for SNS, for Regiobank, and for BLG Wonen. And the Volksbank is all about SME. So for them, it was essential to make SME lending effortless. And so when we started our cooperation, they made quite some significant changes. And that resulted for their SMEs in a short time to yes. Of course, meaning a short time until they get a loan decision. And it also gave them a very short time to cash, where the SMEs would actually get the loan paid up, or where they would have the credit facility. And we see that SMEs nowadays are very happy with the Volksbank, because in just a couple of years, we saw their net promoter score go up with 10 points, which is actually quite impressive. And at the same time, we also saw that the Volksbank had their capacity going up and their costs going down. And that is with 90% that it went down, which is extremely impressive. And I hope that by now you will be wondering, well, what did they do? Because we already addressed how many banks struggle with SME lending, and yet the Volksbank achieved to get these impressive results. And the key to all of this is in platforms. So let's dive deeper into this. And when it comes to platforms, I sometimes wonder, and maybe I'm just becoming an old guy, but I always wonder if young people still know how to cook, because sometimes it seems that when it comes to food, that they don't know better than having Uber Eats, where you have your meal under the push of a button. And let's say that the older guys, such as myself, we also experienced other times when ordering a meal was actually quite a challenge. And then I think of having to go to the kitchen and open a kitchen drawer and search for a menu. Then I would have to call the restaurant and hope that they would take my order all right, that they would understand it. Then I would have to wait for the delivery guy to show up. And in the end, he would want to have a cash payment. So yeah, having those kebabs on a Sunday evening would be quite challenging. And that all changed completely with platforms like Uber Eats, because now I just take my tablet or my computer, I choose what I want, and Uber Eats takes care of everything. So they instruct the restaurant, they instruct the delivery guy, they make sure that they get paid. And I can even do stuff in the meantime, because I can track my meal from fridge to front door. And yeah, the same thing we also see with things such as media streaming, with traveling, with mobility, and so on. And that is where it is all about having a fast and easy experience, and where it covers the entire value chain, and where it also exchanges value. And that they do that between people, between the platform and between data. And what such platforms like Uber Eats, Airbnb, and Netflix share is that they provide a unifying engagement for all the parties in the platform. And they also orchestrate the value exchange between the customers, the producers, and the service providers. And typically, the platform also supports processes. So not to only deliver the primary value, but also for new parties to join and to manage themselves and to monitor, etc. And platforms in that way have completely changed our expectations, and they have made a new normal in many different industries. And when it comes to lending, how cool would it be that you as a lender would also be able to act as such a platform and to be the obvious place to go to when an SME is looking for a loan, and that you can offer your customers that same fast and easy engagement, and that you have a full value chain there covered with processes and with orchestration, and that actually, in fact, your bank would set the the new normal in lending. And so let's figure that out, because here we see Fyndoo, which enables banks such as the Volksbank to actually act as a platform. and to give their partners and their customers that Uber Eats experience, and to do that for lending. And they do that from the front to the middle to the back, where everything is one seamless experience. And when we take a closer look at that, we see that they engage with their customers, so that they build fast and easy propositions, and that the customer gets a very fast and intuitive loan journey. They have a self-servicing portal to make adjustments, and the bank can also provide their apps using an open lending API. And then we see that they have all functionality there to process the loans, to monitor that, and also to report about that. Because, of course, I already mentioned the regulators, and it's also very important to show that. And at the bank, at the back, they connect all their partners. So they connect partners and they connect service providers. And in the end, it's not only about the SME or your employees or your advisors. No, it is about the entire platform that should feel effortless, and that you would have all of this in the cloud, that maintenance is being taken care of, so that in the end, also for you as a lender, that it's very effortless. And so let me illustrate this all with an example. So for lenders in the European Union, of course, we have the European Central Bank. And one of the things that the ECB requires is that you as a bank, that you also act as responsible lenders, so that you make sure that your SMEs do not overlend, and that you also report about your efforts there. So in the platform, that should work as following. So the orchestration would allow your SME or one of your partners, let's say an accountant, to provide financial data and to do that in a digital way. And there it would then be received in the process layer, so in the middle, and that is where the financial data would automatically be structured. So where you do the spreading, and that you make sure that it gets presented in a way how you as a bank would expect it, that all the ratios will be calculated, that the platform would detect if there are any irregularities. And if there would be, that a task will be created for one of your employees, and that they would also get an instruction of what to specifically look at. And then in the end, it's about presenting this in the engagement layer. So where, for example, your advisor will get the financial data, and where they can make processes, these scenarios, a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, a customized scenario, and to together go through these scenarios with the SME to show what is the financial implication if you would invest in assets, or what would happen if you would want to buy a new office, or what does it mean for your liquidity need if you would reduce your debtor term with 5 days to have your customers pay sooner? What would the effect of that be on your loan need? And that is what we call effortless lending. That it is all very easy, and that it works from the front to the back and vice versa, so that it is efficient, that it is automated, and that it is supportive interaction. Where again, I mentioned it, that in the end you have a fast and seamless experience, and that you also do that at a minimum cost. And that is what we call effortless lending. And so from the moment that you start being a lending platform, you should also be positioned clearly. So how to distinct yourself, how to make sure that people go to you when they need a loan, and why not go to others? And that means that you have to make certain choices. And that would mean choices in proposition, in your unique selling points, in how to design your processes, and with whom to cooperate. And these are all choices where you make your own platform identity. And that is what we want to provide with you with the Fyndoo platform. And so I already mentioned that we talk to a lot of SMEs and that we talk to a lot of banks. And we also did that when it comes to making choices for your lending platform, because this is also a technology choice, because it is tech that drives your platform. And during our talks with banks, we noticed that there are 4 factors that banks look at when selecting their technology. And so what I would like to do first is to discuss these four factors with you. And then later on, we will take a look at how different vendors would score at that. So let's go through these factors. So the first one, what we hear from banks is that they are looking for functional completeness. And over there, it is having your repository, so having everything that you need when it comes to your products, your processes, your decisioning, your loan management, loan monitoring, etc. Then we see speed to market, which is of course all about how fast can you get up and running to actually realize business value. And I also understand that because as a bank, when you have to pay for a license to use technology, then you also want to experience the benefits as soon as possible. Then we see the tech orchestration, which is all about the ability to connect others to your system. So to have standard connectors, to be able to have new connectors, but also to make sure that your digital ecosystem runs smoothly and that it is also experienced like that by your customers and your partners. And then last but not least, adaptivity. So this is the ability to change things, to tweak your processes, and to make sure that you have a different approach than the rest. And so let's take a look at how different vendors of systems score on these 4 aspects. And so then first we have BPM systems. Think of, for example, Pega. They score low on functional completeness and speed to market, which is also logical because there I always say that you begin with an empty sheet of paper and you get to design everything yourself. So to design your products, your processes, your rules, whatsoever. And that, of course, makes it score high on adaptivity because you have to make everything yourself. And probably it's also good at tech orchestration, but it just takes a lot of time because you start with an empty sheet, and over there, I don't see it happening that you would go live within 100 days or maybe not even within a year. Then looking at core lending, think Mambu. I always see this as the mirror image of BPM because that is where you do get a lot of technology, a lot of functional completeness from the start. So you have your products, your processes, everything when it comes to that. It's quite okay when it comes to speed to market. But over there, the thing is, how is it with connecting your partners? And what if you want to change things? Can you do that in a safe way to not compromise the stability of the rest of the system? And then thirdly, we see banking systems. And over here, I would think of Oak North, FICO, Solaris Bank. And these are actually fintech banks that sell their system. And so that is where you see that you get a lot of functionality. You have high speed to market because it's already used. It's quite okay for tech orchestration, but well, when it comes to adaptivity, that is where I always say you can maybe change some buttons. You can change the colors. You can paste your own logo on it. And well, congratulations, because then you are one of many banks. And the question you should ask yourself here is, well, is that actually my ambition? Is that what I want? And so let's take a look at Fyndoo. And I chose not to put Fyndoo in this overview because, well, it would maybe sound a little bit lame, but having these selection criteria that were made up by banks in mind, we created Fyndoo. And also bear in mind that we did not do this overnight. I already mentioned a couple of times that we have been around for quite some time. And that is where Fyndoo is the latest generation of software that we have been working on. And Fyndoo is the result of making sure that we tick all these boxes. and that we do so by not compromising on the other ones. And the result of that is that we have made an extremely adaptive platform, which is no code, but which is also enriched with a lot of domain knowledge. And that is knowledge that is already there, that you can use it out of the box, but that at the same time you can still make changes, and that you can do that also in a safe way where it still works well in the whole entity. And what a cool example would be to illustrate Effortless here has to do a little bit with, well, the times that we are living in right now. That is the Dutch COVID guarantee scheme. And hopefully right now we're going a little bit towards the end of the pandemic. But when we were at the start of the pandemic, the Dutch government said that the Dutch SMEs should be supported. And so they wanted to provide with loans that were backed by the state. But for this, the government also demanded that all the lenders would have shorter and simplified origination processes. And so the Volksbank, they took the existing functionality and they created a simplified product. They also copied the processes and they got rid of some steps. They adjusted the decision rules to make it all much simpler. And they launched this within 2 weeks. And the finance ministry was actually very impressed. And they set it as a standard for the other banks to follow as well. And this only could have been possible by Fyndoo ticking all these boxes. And so that we made sure that there was a functional completeness, that the Volksbank already had something that they could start working on, and that they could adjust the tech orchestration, that they could change the decision rules, the process steps by ticking the adaptivity box. And last but not least, speed to market. So up and running within 2 weeks. And I must say that, yeah, actually it is needless to say that we were super proud that we could support with our platforms to give those Dutch SMEs that extra breath of air to get through the pandemic to the moment where we're starting to get right now, where they can normally function as a company again and doing their thing. And so I started with an enormous opportunity, an opportunity that of course also needs a very good plan, and an opportunity that does seem challenging. But with the right technology choices and with that good plan, this challenge can also be a tremendous opportunity and something that is very feasible and attractive for you as a lender. And as a last note to this short presentation, I would like to invite you to discuss how to work out such an opportunity. So if you would be interested, do reach out to us and share your ambitions, your challenges, and let's together see how your bank could also provide that same Uber Eats experience for lending. And so by now I've reached the end of my presentation. I hope that it gave you all some new insights. And most of all, I hope that it sparked your ambitions, those ambitions that will also help our SMEs to realize their dreams, and by doing that, contributing to our society, because SME lending is important. It's really important, but it should also be effortless, really effortless. And so now I would like to hand over the lead to Olena, and I would like to thank you for your attention. And I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yes, Dimitry, thank you very much. And yes, being an SME customer here in Poland, I would like to have such an Uber Eats lending platform with my bank. So yes, we have questions. So let me at once start reading this. Okay, so we had the question regarding the example of Volksbank that you showed. So you have mentioned NPS plus 10%, from which level? And the second question here is that what is expected time to cash for SMEs in the example you have mentioned? I see that Jamie has already answered the time to see 5 days, on average 2 working days. These was on the Volksbank example. Yes, and on the NPS, on a scale from 0 to 10, average client scoring is 7. Even rejected customers are included here for good substantiations and referrals. Okay, so you agree with this answer? We have it.
Well, I'm very happy to have Jamie as my helper here. Yeah, so, but these are all numbers that were provided by the Volksbank. So looking at the NPS, these are numbers that they also publish in their annual reports. And that is also the same with the making the savings of 90%. That is not specifically mentioned in their report, but this is something that we have worked out with the Volksbank.
My question will be while we are waiting for another ones, and yes, I encourage you, please type your questions into the chat. We still have some time to answer. My question is how the Fyndoo platform can be integrated or embedded to the existing banking software, either core system or maybe existing lending solutions, meaning so does this support the back office operations or front office as well, meaning the customer initiates the lending processes and the application from the bank's website, right? So how does it look like technically?
Of course, I showed that sheet where you have to make choices as a lender when you want to present yourself as a platform. And Fyndoo is all about choosing. So you choose. And that also means that you can choose which part of the Fyndoo platform to use. So you can choose to use the engagement layer. You can choose to use the process layer or parts of that, or to use the connectivity part of Fyndoo. And so there's a lot of choices there, a lot of possibilities. And then to go into the details, we would usually have a deep dive. So that is where our team sits together with the team of the lender. And that is when we look at things as in what is your ambition and what is the best approach from the Fyndoo platform approach to help you with that.
And what does it take from the bank to launch such kind of platform in cooperation with you, meaning time, people, resources, budget maybe?
Yeah, there again, I mentioned we have a deep dive. So that is always a phase that we go into before we actually start our partnership. And in the deep dive, we have a team of Topicus and a team of the lender working quite intensively together. And that is usually for the period of a couple of weeks, let's say 2 up to 4 weeks. And that is where they go through all the information. So what is the ambition of the bank? Where are your challenges? How does your ecosystem look like? So with which partners do we need to integrate? And then we make a plan. And we make a plan to go towards a market-ready product. And that is, again, I mentioned the time to market. We want to make sure that we end up in a situation where the lender can start getting additional business value from the Fyndoo platform as soon as possible.
From your experience at Topicus with your customers, do the banks usually implement the Fyndoo platform for kind of one business segment, meaning only, for example, only for SMEs or only for corporates, or usually they cover all the segments that they are serving?
Yeah, and again, there it is, you choose. So Fyndoo is originally developed for SME and corporate loans. And so that means that that is where it's tailored. But that also means that banks can use it for consumer loans, because I always see that as relatively a simpler lending product than when looking at SME lending or corporate. And there it also depends on what does the bank want. So we have banks that use Fyndoo lending for corporate loans, but we also see banks such as the Volksbank that use it for actually all types of loans.
Question from my side: if there will be a challenging I don't know, task, let's say, to set time to yes and time to cash, like within 2 hours, not 2 working days. Is it possible with the Fyndoo platform? And
Well,
and
yeah,
maybe
actually,
and maybe second
yeah.
question also here, does it support like because like what we see here in the region, there are two types of processes, meaning that, for example, for small tickets there could be fully digitalized and without any underwriters participation, human underwriters participation, the decision making process and time to cash as well can be done with automatically. And for the bigger tickets there could be mixed process, meaning that part of, for example, of the process is so decision making is done by scoring, and then it needs the verification of the human underwriters, and then like giving an order of time to cash or disbursing the money. Does the platform supports all the scenarios, or how does it look as well?
Well, it's a very extensive question, and that it all depends on the whole situation. And so that is where we would then look at a business case scenario where we will draft a business case. And of course, it fully depends on what kind of product are we talking about. And what we do see is that we make sure that, first of all, with Fyndoo, that we get a loan application that is as complete as possible, because when you have to chase the customer for additional documents or additional information, that is where you see that a lot of time is being lost. So it's time consuming, and sometimes it's also costly to do that. And next to that, it also depends on the product. So as you mentioned, some certain products are more suited to do automated processing, so where everything is done by the platform. And again, this is where you choose as a lender. So you can configure your own products, your own processes, and there you can also determine what is being done automatically, or where do I have my employees stepping in. And of course, the other thing is that you have your employees only step in at the right moment. So at those places in the process where their expertise matters and has additional value. So do not have them, not have your precious experts look if a loan application is complete, because those are things that the system can do very well. But like, have your employees step in where their expertise makes the difference. And also next to that, we see that there's, for example, more complex products, quite tailored products for which the Fyndoo platform is also used. And over there, for example, you could focus on making sure that all the right information is presented at the relevant moment to your employee, and that you get an efficiency gain over there.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think your question was quite a big one. Did I cover all aspects, or are there still things that you would like to
Yes,
discuss?
yes. So as I understood, that this can be configured by the bank, and the bank can have both processes, right? So at the same time on the platform, right?
What do you mean with both processes?
I
Like
mean
both?
that if the bank divides the customer segments in two parts, I mean, as I mentioned, the
Yeah.
small tickets it goes with the process one, and the bigger tickets go with the process two, having these human underwriters involved, then they can have both on the Fyndoo platform, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on
So you can have
the
different products with different processes, and even with the example of the Volksbank, and that is where you can also use it for white labeling. So the
Okay.
Volksbank, they have three separate labels. So SNS Bank, Regio Bank, and BLG Wonen, for which they use the same platform. And that is where what we say, we have the Chinese wall principle, so that it is three different entities, to say it like that.
Okay. What was your fastest implementation with the bank of the platform?
Well, we have a promise in our company and towards our clients, and that is to do an implementation in 100 days. So
Okay.
that is where I already mentioned the deep dive phase, where our teams work together. and
Mm-hmm.
that's where we also together draft the market ready product. And our aim there, our promise, because we have a track record there, is that we did that within 100 days, and we did that more than once. So we're quite confident about that, and
Mm-hmm.
also quite proud because, as I said, when you start paying your software license, then, well, when the costs go out, you also want to see the benefits as soon as possible.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay, I see we do not have questions from our attendees, and we are already running out of the time. So thank you very much, Dimitry, for the presentation and for the contribution. Thank you, our attendees, for being with us. And as I mentioned, we will send you the video and the presentation, and also contact Dimitry or me directly if you would like to know and receive more details. So thank you very much. Yes,
You're welcome.
Thank
You
you.
very much, everyone, for attending, and wishing you all a nice day, and hoping to talk to you soon.
Yes, and see you next time online. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.